Hello indie game fans, hidden gems of 2024 are indie games outside of the mainstream, having interesting ideas but might be a little flawed, but hey, that's why I love them, imperfections and all, so let's begin with Gestalt, Steam and Cinder, one of the prettiest pixel art titles to come along, which was stuck in development hell for quite a while, finally making it out the door, but you can feel the effect of the long development cycle in the design of the game. Visually, this is an 11 out of 10, having gorgeous animations and art, with combat being pretty decent as well, mixing melee and ranged weapons. There are RPG-like progression systems, similar to a Castlevania game with stats and a skill tree, but the writing and pacing of this game feels off, especially towards the end, and is fairly linear by Metroidvania standards. Similarly, another game which is all art style is #Blood, which is why I wanted to give it a mention, looking like something you would find on Cartoon Network, only a lot bloodier than you might expect. Being a vampire hunting action-adventure title set against the backdrop of a high school, it looks gorgeous, but unfortunately, combat isn't the best and can be a bit repetitive, which I guess shows their inexperience as a game developer since this team was previously making animations only, so a great first attempt, and they did even release a free content update with werewolves, so it's worth checking out. This video is brought to you by Wild Woods, a co-op action-adventure title in which you play as cats and sees up to 4 players escorting a wagon through a dangerous forest. By day, you must actively gather resources from the forest in order to upgrade your wagon, but also need to keep the beacon fire on said wagon burning, and by night, the wagon will come under attack, so you need to fight off hostile woodland creatures. As you make your way through the woods, there will be forks in the road, and as a team, you must decide on which path to take, which differ in terms of risk and reward, culminating in challenging boss fights at the end of each area. Being a co-op focused title, it is of course best with friends, where it supports Steam remote play together and also allows for both local and online players to play together, which makes it easier to set things up. The current version contains 2 biomes but does have quite the number and variety of wagon and player upgrades and is replayable, with the developers having announced a roadmap with new character roles, more upgrades, challenges, a 3rd biome and boss, story content, new enemies, and of course, updates based on community feedback from early access to come, but it's already a fantastic first step. So if interested, you can buy the game right now on Steam via the link in the description below. Wanna get weird? Here's a strange little title that serves more as a bookmark for myself on how strange and weird indie games can get, since in Arctic Eggs, you are cooking food for NPCs in what seems like some sort of frozen cyberpunk-ish setting, having to wrangle with the physics. And of course, it is not just limited to frying eggs, but also bacon, cigarettes, bullets and cockroaches as well, self-describing as the getting over it of cooking games, and is just a cool weird thing, with developer The Water Museum appearing to be working on more weird titles as well. A couple of you mentioned the conspicuous absence of Oblivion Override in the Best Roguelites of the Year video, and to that I say fair enough, since this roguelite platformer where you play as a ninja killer bot in the post-apocalypse is pretty good. It has fantastic action and absolutely gorgeous art, with weapon variety and progression systems as well. However, its English language localization leaves much to be desired, even if you can kind of get the gist of what they are talking about, so some rough edges to send off for sure, but otherwise, it's a good one of these that will be of interest to fans of the genre. It is pretty risky to do a 3D action-adventure platformer, especially in 2024, since there is the possibility that it turns out like Akimbot, a great game which is criminally overlooked, that, if made by a larger team, might spell certain doom for them, but hopefully this is not the end of the story for developer Evil Raptor. This is from the people that made Pumpkin Jack, a medieval-style action title with a spooky theme that was well received, where in this project, the developers opted for a Ratchet & Clank style of experience instead. Our outlaw robot and a drone buddy have to blast their way through other robots in order to save the universe from impending doom, having action-packed combat, but is a little bit on the easier side, and did appear to have optimization issues with how the game ran, and difficulty attaining 60 FPS, but still, games like this are rare these days, so check it out if interested. If you love tycoon games, I would highly recommend checking out Dungeon Tycoon as well, one in which you're building your very own dungeon, but not for the reasons you might think. You see, rather than trying to protect your treasure from greedy heroes, you are trying to attract these heroes instead, still summoning monsters, building traps and designing the layout, but not just to simply kill them, no, but rather ensure that they do not get killed and don't go home empty-handed so that they will come visit again. Yes, this is a full-on tourist business with a dungeon theme instead of the more sinister overtones of other games in this space, with a cool art style and is pretty neat. Another management title but with a slightly different twist is My Lovely Empress, coming to us from the developer of My Lovely Daughter and My Lovely Wife, and is their most ambitious title to date. The first two games were more management sim-like in the vein of the Princess Maker games, but much more dark, of course, with the whole human sacrifice thing and so on, where they have expanded upon the empire management aspect in this game. You play as the ruler of the realm, whose empress has died, now having to rule and navigate the complexities of running an empire by managing relationships with neighbouring rulers and keeping the peace between various internal factions so that your people can prosper, which then gives you the option to harvest their souls to resurrect your beloved. If that isn't dark and twisted, I don't know what is, where you have the ability to summon Yao Guai or demons to help along the way. These powerful creatures have abilities that can help you deal with, let's say, problems in the Empire, but do thirst for human souls, where these demons can be both powerful allies or precious sacrifices as well. It does have a gorgeous art style and an impressive theme, but might fall a bit short if you were expecting a deep strategy title like Crusader Kings or something, so this is definitely not that, but it's still worth a look. The definition of a hidden gem is Berserk Boy, since this pixel art action platformer with some Mega Man Zero inspiration is good and looks beautiful even if the formula has been done before and isn't doing anything too crazy. Our hero, the titular Berserk Boy, has a variety of elemental forms which can be used in combat as well as in platforming, giving him access to special abilities, and has to use these to deal with the evil Dr. Genos and his army of dark energy minions. You will be switching forms and bouncing all over the place as you jump from enemy to enemy, having an arcadey and high score chasing feel to the combat with a meter as well, so if you really wanted to, you could try to get the high score, but if you just want to play it casually, that is an option as well and is a great one of these. One of the more unique titles to come along is This Game Trying to Kill Me?, a title that does look like the 2021 mega hit Inscription, but with a slightly different game design. It is also set in a creepy old shack in the woods where you're told to play through this computer game in exchange for your freedom. But then things start to get weird, since what is in the game manifests itself in the real world and the actions that you take in the shack affects what is happening in the game as well. The characters in this game are pretty freaky, especially in how they move and enter the shack, being an interesting blend of puzzle game with some horror overtones, although I wouldn't exactly consider this to be a horror game, and it's a well-made, if short, puzzle experience. We had our share of Vampire Survivors style titles in 2024 as well, and while most of them were a dime a dozen, a game with a twist is Karate Survivor. For one, this is a melee combat focused entry in which you are using punches and kicks to defeat enemies. It is a throwback to the action movies of the 80s that star Jackie Chan in particular, with the main character having a visual resemblance to him as well, where in addition to martial arts, you need to use the environment and improvise weapons as well. These weapons include everything from plastic flamingos to mop handles, a child's toy hammer, plates, bottles, and more, being able to punch vending machines or to bring down scaffolding for a variety of environmental interactions. Of course, there are a number of upgrades, both in-run and permanent, which improve all aspects of the game, from more damaging attacks to larger pickup ranges, so at its core, it is still one of these, but it feels different enough to be of note, with level variety and bosses as well to keep things interesting. An awesome strategy symbol builder title is Cat God Wrench, one that follows in the footsteps of games like Luck Be a Landlord, but with a much less overt gambling theme, replacing the slot machine with a cute and cozy animal wrench. The animals generate currency needed to pay tribute to the cat god, and of course do combo in interesting ways. There are a variety of cat gods, each with unique traits, along with different families of animals, as well as relics that might just make you change your strategy for the run, along with multiple difficulty levels, so there's plenty of replayability here, along with an adorable art style, so if you enjoy titles like Balatro and like to see numbers go up, this will be the game for you. An adorable looking job simulator title is Lost But Found, putting you in charge of the lost and found department at an airport, having to sort out and quickly find the items to reunite them with their rightful owners. The art style is absolutely adorable, but this is not just a simple hidden object game, since it layers on job simulation, where you are rewarded the more quickly you return items, which can then be used to purchase more items to make you better at your job. Or you could keep the items for yourself and sell it on the black market, so it's a little bit like Papers, Please, with a content roadmap being announced with more features to come, being a small, cheap title that is pretty good. Speaking of smaller games, I want to give a very special mention to King of the Bridge as well, a variant on chess, where you play against a bridge troll instead. However, of course this is not just chess, since the troll has its own rules in the form of an entire rulebook, so you need to learn and understand this new version of chess so that you do not break the rules. On the flip side, if your opponent cheats and does not act according to the rulebook, you can call him out on that, which then allows you to cheat on your next move. Once you get the hang of the rules, it will be possible to beat the troll, but then there are multiple endings to figure out and achievements to go along with that, and it's also another relatively low-cost title, so if you love chess, do give this a go. One of the best games of the year is Lone Slewer, a first-person platformer with a climb anything mechanic in which you play as an android guided by a visual glitch in your system to explore a gigantic structure. This is from a first-person perspective, in which you are using your dual picks to climb, but at the same time have to carefully make your way across wire-thin beams as well as slide on sloped surfaces until you can make the next jump to the next surface. The throwback visuals are very well done and thus add to its foreboding atmosphere, and while aspects of this are meant for speed running, playing through it as a normal person is just as fun, especially if you love exploration in games. An unfortunate fact about the hidden gems list is that puzzle games tend to end up here, which is a shame since their quality has been improving over the past couple of years, with an excellent example of which being Kato Buttered Cat. This is a puzzle platformer that explores the paradox of cats always landing on their feet and buttered toast always landing butter side down. So what happens when you strap the two together? Well, the answer is that this cat-toast combination can essentially fly, using this to your advantage to solve the puzzles, but you're also able to detach the two and have to control cat and toast separately in order to solve some puzzles. There is gameplay variety in the form of various minigames like Snake and a runner type 3D one, along with plenty of secrets to uncover within the levels themselves, and is a must-get for puzzle game fans. We also had the 1.0 release of Frontier Hunter Urza's Wheel of Fortune, an anime-inspired title that is the follow-up to the roguelite platformer Tower Hunter Urza's Trial, but this time reimagined as a full-on Metroidvania instead. The main character, Urza, has successfully managed to earn her hunter's license and has become one of the rising stars in the Imperial Force, and now, under the instruction of the Emperor, she leads a new exploration team to scout new lands, battle monsters, and uncover the mysteries of the world. What is interesting about this game is the setting, since it mixes sci-fi and fantasy, having airships and guns alongside giant monsters, serpents and werewolves, which does lead to quite the amount of variety when it comes to not only enemies and bosses, but also level design and locations. Adding to that is the ability to seamlessly swap between the 3 characters in your party, whose attacks and abilities can be comboed together, along with RPG-like progression with stats and equipment, and you have the foundation for a solid title. It did remind me of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night as well, but a little less cohesive overall, but still, it's a good game worth a play. Remember when I talked about puzzle games being in the hidden gems list? That is the exact scenario here with Owls of Sea and Sky, an open world sokoban or block pushing puzzle game, which admittedly is an old school kind of title going back to games like Chip's Challenge, but the developers here have expanded it out into an open world structure with plenty of secrets to uncover. I mentioned in last year's Game of the Year video that for the most part, level-based puzzle games are dead, now having found their home on mobile along with all the exploitative monetization practices there, so for a premium title on Steam, developers must do much more, usually taking the form of secrets and meta puzzles, which has been accomplished here. You are exploring the various islands in the archipelago, each filled with their own unique gimmicks to master, which then have to be put together as a whole if you want to 100% the game. Generally, you explore on one island until you feel like you're stuck, but then the open world structure allows you to go off and explore another, perhaps gaining a new ability that might help, but as a result, the puzzle aspect of this puzzle game might not be as pure as say Pack-a-Rat Down the Bun Burrows, but still, it's a must-get for fans of the genre. Ever so often, we get titles which I would describe as flow state games, having such smooth action that one move feeds into the next, and when you really do get in the zone, the combat in Shady Night is truly one of the best. This is a first-person melee slasher in which you have to defeat all enemies in a level, but have to do so with style, chaining together your grappling hook chain dagger, sword slashes, arrow shots, slides, kicks and more, as you attempt to get the triple S rank in each level. In many ways, this does resemble the game flow of something like Neon White, only stripping out the anime story bits in favour of non-stop action, having a cool visual style as well, and is very underrated. Speaking of underrated, one of the cleverest and most beautiful titles of the year is Arco, a pixel art tactics title that follows 4 characters and 3 intertwining stories, being self-described as a Mesoamerican fantasy RPG where the 4 indigenous heroes battle monstrous creatures, rival nations, and greedy colonizers. But beware, since all roads in Arco lead to revenge. Getting the obvious out of the way, this is one of the prettiest pixel art titles ever, with intricately detailed environments and locations, contrasted with the more minimalist look of the characters and enemies, where it has a very interesting combat system which may be to its detriment. In theory, this game is turn-based, where combat does pause, which allows you to queue up your next command, whether it be to attack or move, which then resolves simultaneously with your enemies, so you need to lead your shots or to anticipate where enemies are going to move to if you wanted to, say, throw a stick of dynamite on the ground. As such, it does take a while to get used to and can be frustrating when you miss, where I do wonder how this would have fared if they went with a more traditional turn-based tactics combat system, but still, it's a cool, weird thing that is worthy of the title of Hidden Gem. Swinging back to an all-action title in Kill Knight, which is more similar to Shady Night mentioned earlier, only this time instead of first person, this has a more classic 3/4 view camera and is a twin-stick shooter instead. You play as a loyal knight who was betrayed and banished to the abyss, now taking the form of a desecrated corpse within a reanimated suit of armor as you take your revenge and have to kill the last angel. So how metal is that? While it looks like a Vampire Survivors inspired title with the swarms of enemies that the game throws at you, this is not a roguelite, where you are essentially starting from zero every time you play, but do get equipment unlocks which vary up the gameplay. The 5 levels here are distinct enough and have plenty of challenge with the intense 3 to 8 minutes required per level, making this perfect for those shorter gaming sessions, but it's a title that I wholeheartedly recommend. If you love Metroidvanias, you might want to take a look at Bow Path of the Teal Lotus, a title that draws upon Japanese mythology for inspiration, specifically in terms of art and enemy designs. You play as a fox celestial blossom, wielding a legendary bow staff, embarking on a mystical journey to fulfill an ancient prophecy. The art style is a highlight, along with the yokai designs, with gameplay, of course, borrowing elements from Hollow Knight and Ori and the Blind Forest, which are fantastic inspirations. It does have an increased focus on aerial combat, so more often than not, you'll find yourself off your feet and up in the air, which feels alright in practice, but might take a while to get used to, especially when you are launching yourself from one lantern to the next. And while it doesn't reinvent the wheel, this is a very well made one of these that is going under the radar, and in a year that was pretty scarce with Metroidvania releases, this is a good one of these to keep you up to date. Old school Zelda-style 3/4 view action-adventure titles are also getting quite rare these days, where if you're interested in games like this, I would recommend Ogu and the Secret Forest. This game released out of early access and might have gotten overlooked because of that, where you play as a baby platypus-looking character going on an adventure in this charming hand-drawn world. It has a cast of unique and interesting characters, along with side activities like fishing, as well as puzzles and secrets to uncover, which complements the combat. The powers of the Great One have been shattered and scattered to the winds, where you must gather these pieces, but have to face off against mighty bosses that are trying to claim it for themselves. But generally, it's on the more light-hearted end of things with how it plays and especially how it looks. If you're trying to 100% the game, parts of it can be frustrating, so you might want to use a guide, but other than that, it's a wonderful title that is very well made, and I'm interested to see what's next from this developer. Here's a roguelike card game that absolutely got me this year in Dice and Fold, a game which combines both dice and cards instead of one or the other, framed as a dungeon crawler where your party of heroes descends ever deeper to take on powerful bosses. You start off a run by choosing a hero, but can recruit allies along the way, having to use their complementary abilities if you want to succeed, where healing in particular is very important. You are rolling dice and slotting them into your cards to activate abilities, with special dice as well as some strategy in the form of holding onto dice or to use them to generate extra gold for upgrades. In roguelite fashion, there are trinkets to collect, which confer powerful abilities, and in a clever bit of game design, it is rather beatable on lower difficulty levels, which makes you want to push your luck to try it at harder difficulties, which is part of the genius of this game. It was a bit of a strange year for Devolver since they did not have any mega hits in 2024, but nonetheless did release great games as always, with the first-person shooter Kicker Combo Angerfoot being of note here. This is from developer Free Lives, who love their variety, having made games in different genres every time they make a new game, so for an FPS to feel this good is of note as well. In some ways, this is Hotline Miami-like, where you are kicking down doors and smoking bad guys, having some trial and error but instant reset element to the flow of the game as well. There is variety in weapons as well as the sneakers that you wear, which grant different abilities, along with a thumping soundtrack, which is good, but it might grate on you after a while, but it is still a fun title worth a play. One of the best games of 2024 is Crypt Custodian, in which you play as a cat in the afterlife, having been sentenced to be its janitor forever, where you can make friends with the other lonely spirits on your way to battle bosses and explore. While this is from a 3/4 view perspective, you can actually jump in this game, so while I'm usually a stickler for this, I would say that this is a Metroidvania since it does have movement-focused abilities and unlocks that allow you to get to new areas, which, along with satisfying combat, makes this a no-brainer, with developer Carl Thompson looking to find his groove with every successive game of his getting better and better, so let's see what's next from him. Watch this video for the best games of 2024.